Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. I'm your host, Priya. Let's dive in. So, this channel is dedicated to helping women find their voice, especially as we navigate through perimenopause, menopause, and we're postmenopausal. Things start to shift in our lives, right? And communication becomes one of those things that really starts to change. We start to say, hey, I don't like that. We start to find our voice in communicating our wants and needs. And as a speech pathologist, when I was working with children, that was one of their first goals, is especially when we were trying to get them to say their first words or to be able to communicate, is they will express their wants and needs using words. And as women, we slowly lose that, especially whatever happens in our lives and the relationships that we get into, and dynamics with childhood or childhood traumas that just really stifle us, and the stories that we hang on to. It was my experience. But as we enter this period of midlife, now that could be a different age for everyone. It could be your 40s, could be your 50s. For me, the shift really started happening around 42. It's that specific where I'm able to tangibly figure out a time when things started to change and I started to feel dissatisfied or express dissatisfaction, and relationships started to change as a result of me communicating. That being said, being the communication coach, being the communication expert, communication, that doesn't mean that I am not going to stumble. That doesn't mean that I am perfect in my communication. On the contrary, I am human, and I have, as much as I can be an expert in communication, there's times where I'm going to be shown a mirror that, hey, Priya, you're not practicing what you preach. Or showing me communication patterns that just really aren't effective or actually can be destructive. Now, I often keep notes in front of me for these episodes. This one is authentically me. You're getting me, raw and real, and expressing vulnerability. And also, if I can help you to see that it's okay to be human. Like, as we step into this period of midlife and as we reflect on the past, as we move into the future, and as we embrace the present moment, things aren't always going to be perfect, and we are imperfectly perfect. We are. And it's just about being in a place of growth. When these things come up to the surface, when we're challenged with the exact things that we're teaching on, which I'm going to explain what happened now, it's an opportunity for growth. Now, for some people, and this is where I was in the past, I didn't take those opportunities for growth. I got offended easily. I took things personally. I got mad. I got, all of these things, and or just detached from people, or just completely disconnected, disassociated from people. And at some point, as I stepped into this period around 42, I started to say, no, things have to be better. Like, our lives, everything is really driven by human connection. And it's about being able to connect with people on different levels and not necessarily being perfect, because we could think that we're being perfect with somebody when we're communicating, and meanwhile they're getting offended, or we said something that just didn't resonate with them. This is about learning to navigate. It's a journey. It's not a destination, as you may have heard. Communication is a journey, and it's really about committing to yourself that you're going to continue to grow, that when you're in dynamics, now whether this is a friendship, whether this is in work dynamics, whether this is an intimate partnership, or even just a budding relationship, something that's blooming and you're nurturing, things are going to come up to the surface, right? And we often think that we're doing the best job, and maybe we're not. And it's a time where we can reflect. I haven't had, with friends, I have plenty of opportunities to reflect, and really, they can show me the mirror. And with certain friends, they can really show me the mirror and be honest and real with me. And I can take that feedback. And from other people, it creates this angst inside. It's uncomfortable. But here's one thing that I want you to learn as you watch this episode. I don't know where exactly this episode is going, but if you're catching this, I hope this resonates with you. What it is about is being the best version of yourself. It's about committing to growth. It's about committing to reflection. And one thing that I've learned is in this journey of self-discovery and growth, it's not comfortable. But it's in the discomfort that the growth happens. It's in the discomfort and sitting with that in our bodies that we're able to reflect and say, okay, here's an opportunity. Here's an opportunity, Priya, for growth. Now you can either go in this direction, one that you've always gone this direction in the past, or we can go in this direction and start to shift things and make things better. Now, I do have a friend that has said to me, you know what? F people. You don't have to change. People, stop trying to change yourself. Just accept yourself for who you are. And they've justified their behavior by saying this to me. And I actually started to believe it. I'm like, okay, well, we don't have to change. And that's a whole other topic around toxic spirituality, because this person also claims to be very spiritual, but uses that spirituality to manipulate and justify their behavior. And that's not me. You know, I did believe that for a while. I started to think about that for a while, but then I said, no, that's not me. I committed quite a few years ago to growth. I committed to having improved relationships, and I committed to stepping into a leadership role. Now, I have a few businesses, and what I'm going to share with you now came up during a reflective call with one of my other mentors for my other business. And as we commit, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're female, if you're in midlife, and you commit to helping others, if you're in a place of service, this also means that you're stepping into leadership. And there's certain qualities that a leader needs to have. And there's certain things that a leader needs to be able to do on a daily basis. So this episode is really about self-reflection, understanding ourselves, and also saying, what do you commit to? Are you going to make that change? Is this something, if a person is saying this to you about you, is it for real? Is it real? Or is it something that you can improve? Or is it just their perception, right? So let's get into the story of what happened this week that's leading me to have do this episode with you. And like I said, I am not editing my videos. You can hear my ums, you can hear my ahs. This is raw and real, Priya, authentic, because this is what it's about. In our real life, and as you walk into midlife, if you are a woman and you're like me, most of the time you've spent your life censoring yourself, editing yourself for the benefit of others. And you've spent way too much time trying to say things in the right way to accommodate others or to get enough likes or subscribers. But no, now we need to start being ourselves. And that means fully and authentically ourselves, no matter what it looks like. So as you can see, I'm in a different background at my parents' house, and they've got their beautiful altar here. So we're going to use the guides from the gods in this altar, this Hindu altar, to facilitate the session and allow the words to just flow so that I really can talk to you authentically about communication and being able to express ourselves. So, like I said, this is in relation to the other business that I have. No need to go into the details of that. But I had a meeting with a mentor. Let's just say that I felt that I got my ass handed to me royally. Okay, so the mentor was talking to me. We meet bi-weekly to talk about the program, my leadership role within the program. And the irony of it is I've had this business for 10 years. I've been running it for 10 years. But I never once thought of myself as the leader in the program. I thought of myself as the director or co-director. I thought of myself as just getting the stuff that needed to get done because it had to get done. Never once did I perceive myself as the leader. And it was only in a recent meeting that somebody referred to me as a leader, and I was taken back and thought, I'm a leader? What? I didn't realize that. Meanwhile, I just have always thought of myself as just get stuff done. If and that could be also where I'm from. I'm from New Jersey. I'm from the East Coast. If you're from New Jersey, if you're from New York, if you're from that tri-state area, you don't wait. You got things done 2 weeks ago. um, and so that's just been my personality. If you follow Biggie astrology, you can go into birth charts and what my double Gemini nature has to do with that. It's a shout out to you, Eric. But she brought this thing up about leadership. That led into talking about another situation that had happened with someone else that I'm a supervisor to. And the person who was my mentor said, Priya, when I heard about this situation, that was a Priya conversation. That should never have been the other person talking. That should have been you going and talking to this person. And I thought to myself, what? That should have been my role. I should have been the one I'm talking about communication, and yet I wasn't the one who was doing the communication. So then the next thing that happened after that, I called a team member and I was like, hey, I just had a mentoring call. I just need to run this by you. She told me that I should have done this, and this. And then that was my responsibility. Should it have been? And I left it open like that. And what this team member lovingly proceeded to tell me was, yeah, Priya, my experience with you is you get stuff done. You're a great coach, but you're not practicing what you preach. When things get hard, you detach and you delegate, or you get somebody else to do it for you. Holy cow. Now, I've been sitting with this for a few days now, and luckily I'm on day 3 of this, that I'm able to integrate and process it more and understand that maybe this is coming up for a reason. This situation is coming up for a reason. This opportunity for growth is coming up because I have committed to growing numerous programs. I'm in Quasi's program. If you haven't heard about Reality Mastery, join it. It's incredible. It will shift you. And just in doing the work, this situation came up to really have me look at myself. Like, what has my communication been about? I can talk about narcissists until I'm blue in the face because I have always attracted narcissists, and I can detect a narcissist from a mile away. I know when that destructive type of communication. And I can also be on this channel, close to 100 videos talking about communication and how the doctor doesn't listen to you, how this person doesn't listen to you, how to say no. But when somebody told me that, Priya, you're pretty much an avoidant person, didn't say that, but said essentially that I avoid and I delegate, I was able to sit back and say, whoa, this is actually what I have done. This is what I've done in my life. Initially it felt like an attack. I was shrinking. I was becoming small. I was falling into this old pattern, and a pattern that women often take on, which is being an over responsibility taker. Because he was reflecting one thing to me, I took on all the blame. Now, do you resonate with that? A lot of times as women, as empaths, if you're in the healing space as I am, if you're in the coaching space, you're an over responsibility taker. You take on all the blame. Somebody might say, oh, you dropped this snack by the door. Meanwhile, you're taking responsibility for all the snacks that were dropped at the grocery store. Weird example, but that's just what's coming up for me right now. You take on all the blame. And that's what I was doing. All of these things were coming to the surface about me, and that, hey, Priya, you give people feedback on how they're communicating with you. You have to be able to receive feedback from them, whether it's true or not, or whether it's what they perceive. It's an opportunity for growth. So in these dynamics, there's true things, right? um I don't need to go into the specifics of the people involved in this conversation, but for the purposes of this episode, I'm going to talk specifically about myself. I do have a pattern of avoiding conflict. I don't like conflict. I have had this chronic people pleasing. I've talked about that on other episodes, just wanting to be the people pleaser, wanting to be liked. And so in my mind, and this goes back to childhood, like I said, these are not adult things that we're dealing with. These are childhood things that have carried on into adulthood, and now we're ready to say, no, I don't, this doesn't resonate with me anymore, or this doesn't resonate with this version of myself. So from when I was little, I've learned that conflict is bad, or conflict gets me in trouble. So just keep quiet and don't say anything. I think my grandfather had given a family member advice saying, just don't, and it was in regards to how they dealt with their wife. And it's like, don't say anything, just keep the peace, just don't say anything. So within my family dynamic, I was taught, don't avoid conflict at all costs, because it's just going to make things really, really messy. And so I didn't realize until a couple of days ago that that's what I was doing, even within my own organization. I didn't even realize that I'm a leader, even though I'm a co-founder of this organization. I didn't realize that, hey, I should be supporting the people that I supervise by actually having these hard conversations. And we're going to talk about having hard conversations. I've avoided hard conversations at all costs, just because, hey, for the simple fact that they're hard, right? Internally, it made me feel like I was creating conflict. Now, there's also the conditioning that happens when we do speak up. I'm going to say that I said that statement, and then I'm going to go into the relationship that I often talk about. That in that relationship, I would bring things up and try to bring it up sensitively and say, hey, this happened. And it created more conflict. It created more angst. And this person was toxic in their communication, because I would say they would be, maybe a couple of weeks later, they would say how something that I did really pissed them off. I said, why didn't you say anything to me? And they said, well, if I said something to you, it would have created more problems. How am I supposed to know that I'm doing something if you don't bring it up to me, right? And I think that that's the other part of this conversation, that we have to be open to the feedback, but it's also toxic when somebody's not providing you with that feedback and just telling you, well, I just figured this is you, this is your personality. That's what that boyfriend used to say. Well, this is you. No, it's not me. And I used to just bawl and cry with this person saying, how am I supposed to make change if you don't tell me? How am I supposed to make that change? As uncomfortable, as painful as it is to look at ourselves in the mirror. And so in this situation with talking to the team member, initially I wanted to be on attack mode. I wanted to be like, well, if this is what you've thought of me, why didn't you say something? But it did get to a deeper layer of why I avoid, why I don't like confrontation. There have been a few relationships in the past, I want to say more than 5 years, where the person told me like it is. They were telling me what my reality was. They were, rather than, there's a way to say, like, my experience of you is such that this is what happened. Or, hey, when we had that meeting with everybody the other day, I perceived it to be that you were doing this. Is that what happened? But in these dynamics with these people, they were telling me, nope, this is what you do. This is you. And this is what, and this was absolutely scammy what you were doing. And they took away my voice, and it enraged me because they were deciding for me what my intention was. Meanwhile, as far as intention, as far as how I've ever showed up in my 50 years, I've never done something to deceive. I can say that with honesty. I've never done something to go behind somebody's back and try and do something against them, or do something for the benefit of my gain, whether it's work or anything like that. What the problem is when somebody's telling you that that's what you're doing without even understanding where you're coming from. I want to say that was about 5 people, and those 5 people aren't in my life anymore. They said, rather than making it a conversation, rather than making it a dialogue, rather than making it where we could figure out together what's going on, they definitively decided something for me, and that's toxic. That is absolutely toxic when that happens. In this scenario, yeah, you know, the feedback didn't feel good. At After even a couple of hours of sitting with the feedback, I started to cry, and it was the type of crying that comes when I'm just like, it's an emotional release. I don't know where it's coming from. And even the other person was saying, I'm really proud of you, Priya, for taking the steps to look at this. And I was getting really, really agitated and angry about that because it felt patronizing. I was already creating stories that, hey, don't tell me that you feel proud of me. You do your own work. And it took some time to just stay silent and sit with the discomfort. So like I said, feedback doesn't always feel good, not in the least. But if you allow yourself to pause and reflect, guess what it does? It shows your growth edge. What is your growth edge, right? It's going to show that point where you're thinking about retreating into this older version of yourself, or you're thinking about, all right, this came up for a reason, and I've been doing personal development for a while, so obviously this is coming up to take me to the next step. And I, luckily with my mentor, I was able to voice this to her, saying this has brought a lot to the surface. And the feedback that I got from her the next day was incredible. It was, when you're a leader, you've got a daily commitment of self-reflecting. And if you're in this place of personal development, growth, and you're trying to improve the things in your life, including relationships, which depend on communication, you have to look inward. You have to look inward on a daily basis, multiple times a day. Even if you're at the grocery store and somebody hits your shoulder and doesn't say sorry, and you're ready to attack in your mind, it's an opportunity to self-reflect. So this opportunity, it really showed me my growth edge. It showed me, all right, you're really uncomfortable right now, but through Kwasi's program, it's in the uncomfortable that we evolve. We make that change. The key, what I learned from even Kwasi, is not necessarily to dive into it and all of a sudden take it on and get offended and take it personally and then ruin 2 days of your life because you've been perseverating on the words that were said. But it's also an opportunity to sit back, be the observer, take it for what it is without taking it personally, and using it as your opportunity to discover your growth edge. We all have an edge, right? We have an edge in everything. And this can be the edge to take your relationships to the next level. And even as we talk about growth edge, and even as I'm showing up here for this episode with you, this has helped me to actually be able to come here and talk authentically, not have notes available, and really to speak from this internal place of just knowing and sharing and being vulnerable and admitting, hey, I'm not perfect. I might be the communication expert. I might be a communication coach. I might have spent my entire adult life doing communication, but I'm not perfect. And the beauty in this, as I talk about this, because this is a nice little stream of consciousness, is as I reflect on, why did I go into communication? Why did I even choose speech therapy? Or why did it find me? Why was this attractive to me? I had other opportunities for career, and I chose this. And as I hit my growth edge, I realized it's because of this. It's because I haven't had effective coping mechanisms for effective communication with people. It's because that I would dismiss or just avoid conflict or just shut down and just not talk. It's because I had these things that started from early on when I was a child that catapulted me into a career around it. And now I get to evolve and really help women find their growth edge so that you can just have a better second half, second act of life. It's not the end of life as we enter menopause. One thing that I learned in this process is, yeah, I need to have some hard conversations. I can't delegate. I can't avoid. I can't run away. It's okay to have conflict. And with the right people, it's not going to be conflict. It can be a compassionate dialogue where you guys are just really brainstorming together. And it's not about finger pointing. It's not about, well, you're a bad person, you're a good person. No, we're done with that duality. This is just about allowing ourselves and giving ourselves permission to have those conversations, hard conversations with the people who are willing to listen, right? It's about clarity. It's about protecting the mission, whether it's a nonprofit organization, whether it's about another entrepreneurial venture that you have, whether it's a family mission, right? This is about clarity and protecting that. And honoring it, honoring the connection and the communication that takes place. One of the things that I've realized that I've done in communication, because it was so hard, is with those people, with the right people, we can have dialogue. We get together again, maybe after it's not so heated anymore, and we can talk about things, and then the energy dissipates. With the right people, they can take the feedback. I can receive the feedback, and it's not so jarring. Now, with those 5 people that I mentioned that aren't really in my life anymore, as I was trying to as they were accusing me of something, and I was trying to stand my ground and justify I don't even want to say it was justifying my behavior, because in the moment I was just being myself. It's how they perceived it. They were shutting down my voice. They kept saying, nope, this is how it is. This is how it is. They had already decided in their mind. And so what I did as a communication defense was I would block them for 24 hours so I didn't see any further texts come in. And then I would unblock them. And then conversation went back to what it was before. Did our conversations, or did the angst, or did the unspoken ever get spoken? No. Is that a reason why those relationships don't exist in my life anymore? I don't know. But it was not the best. And what I was doing was protecting myself from feeling hurt by things that are said, because I was so vulnerable to words. I still am. And words are words, right? And luckily, as you better your communication and you start to shift things in your life, you'll notice that different relationships are coming into your life, as I've spoken about in other episodes, that are more nurturing, that are more reciprocal, that are more loving. As I evolve, as I even explore my growth edge, and as I think about my meditation practice, it's based on Buddhist beliefs about loving kindness and compassion for everyone, regardless of what they've done to me, what they've said to me. And that's an edge, because I can't just say, all right, I'm going to offer you loving kindness and compassion, but I'm not going to offer it to you because you said that to me. It really is a place of opportunity to say, hey, are you practicing what you preach, Priya? When you get on this YouTube channel weekly, and really try to share your expertise around communication, and you're not even using those techniques. So that's been brought to the surface. Um, and as I go back to talking about hard conversations, and that it's not about conflict, it is about clarity and protecting the mission of whatever the mission is. The real skill isn't being perfect at confrontation. It doesn't have to feel like confrontation, because in those conversations that I've had that are loving, that are kind, and that are compassionate, it hasn't been confrontational. I haven't felt like I was being confronted, and the other person didn't feel like they were being confronted. It was a very loving conversation where there's a lot of head nodding and say, yeah, I hear you on that. Yeah, I hear you on that. Conversations, communication is an opportunity for growth. All the parties involved, not just one sided, right? Not just one sided. So if somebody is giving you feedback and it hurts you and it stings you, as it did me, it's also an opportunity for growth within them to say, okay, I said these things. How am I thinking about this? What did this bring up for me? Was I really listening to this person, or was I just telling them what to do? Was I projecting all my stuff onto them while meanwhile they were trying to share? So it's a two-way road here, not just all about you. So like I said, it's not about being perfect at confrontation, but it is also about holding your ground without being pulled into manipulation or the other person's perceived worldview. It's because that can happen too. And I'll be honest about that. Yes, there are people, and I don't want to say this, that it's that people are manipulative intentionally, but people learn manipulation through their lived experiences and whatever else has happened that brought them to this place in adulthood. And so a lot of times when we're trying to justify our behavior, justify what we've done, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's at home, friendships, it's easy, especially if you're an empathetic person, to be pulled into manipulation and then to have your pendulum swing all the way to the other side because that person has drawn you into their world. So having these real conversations is also about learning to hold your ground without being pulled into it, right? It's about being objective and getting rid of the emotion around it when you're having these hard conversations. As I mentioned the word emotions, one thing that I do want to bring up, because in this process of being confronted with, hey Priya, this is what you're doing, I did speak to a friend, and she kept saying to me, you sound angry. You sound angry. And in retrospect, as I was processing this with my sister, so what? So what if I was angry? And so often as women, we are dismissed for that emotion that we have. People are quick to say, oh, you're so why are you so irritated? Why are you so angry? When you're expressing yourself, when you're communicating, when you're sharing. And I'm done with that. I'm really done with that. So if I am angry, it's okay. If you are angry when you're communicating or you're sharing something that's come up or the feedback that you've received, it's okay. Yeah, this whole period of midlife, we're done being dismissed even with our emotions. So it was interesting to me in this whole thing that has happened in the past couple of days that another woman is doing that to me by saying, you're angry, rather than, yeah, you're really angry right now, and so let's work through that together. It was, but so what? This was how it was manifesting in my body, and then ultimately what happened, even when I was thinking about it yesterday, was I wasn't even angry. I was irritated. I know what anger feels like in my body, and that anger actually results in that crying for me. When I'm super angry, the way that my body releases that anger is through crying. I have an emotional release, which is not always comfortable for other people. For that partner, the toxic partner, often when we had an argument, I would just cry, and it felt so good. It was like this, the floodgates had opened, and I was just able to cry and release. And they didn't like it. They were just like, they would immediately try to fix it. And I was like, I'm crying because I'm releasing. This is what I do to release the anger, because I've had this pent up in me. And so when you are having these hard conversations, if you are faced with hard truths around your communication style, how you cope with conversations, or how you cope with conflict, how you cope with difficult decisions, difficult conversations, and you notice that certain emotions are coming up, it's okay. Sit with them. Don't let anybody try to talk you out of them and tell you, you're angry right now, you shouldn't be. Do not. That's the one thing that I want you to take from this. We're done with that, right? In midlife, as we enter this second part of our life, because we've done it our entire lives. We've not been allowed to express our emotions. So that's a little tangent that I took you on. So in this whole process, and in this whole conversation that I'm having with you right now as my viewer, this was super painful. It was super painful, having that mirror shown to me. If I had more tools, maybe I would be able to just take it as objective feedback and say, all right, here's a place for improvement. But I realized this is exactly what I teach. I'm still in the practice too. So a lot of times when we're thinking of ourselves as the expert, as the coach, we think we have to be perfect. So if you're catching this and you're thinking, well, I teach nutrition, so therefore my nutrition needs to be perfect all the time. No. What happens if you decide to have a chocolate bar? Does that make you a bad nutritionist or a personal trainer? You have to offer yourself grace, which is where I'm going to go in. What does grace look like? We'll go into that in a minute. This is about finding your voice at midlife, and that is not a destination. This is going to be an evolution till the day that you're in the grave. You're going to continue to find your voice from now until the end, and it's going to evolve. And maybe 10 years from now, you're going to look back and say, whoa, that's how I used to communicate then. And you're going to reflect back, and it's going to be a different version of yourself. And then maybe 20 years from now, and so on. You don't have to get it perfect. And I hope by watching this, you're understanding that you don't have to get it perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But the right people are going to be there for you no matter what. The right people are going to be there to show you your growth edge. And like I said, you have a choice. You have a choice what you're going to do with that edge. You can just kind of stay where you are comfortable, or you can choose to face that edge head on, like I did, and say, all right, I'm going to allow myself to sit with the discomfort, and this is an evolution for a newer version or more improved version of myself. Because I don't resonate with what that other person said to me. It's like, don't change. You don't have to change for anybody. I'm not changing for anybody. I'm changing for myself because it just makes me happier. It makes me a happier version of myself. Like I said, you don't have to get it perfect, but you just have to be willing to step up one small step at a time. Baby steps. That's what it's about. Baby steps. And, even though, like I said, even though I coach on communication, it's okay to trip up sometimes. That's what this helped me to understand is, hey, Priya, you're human. You're not superhuman. And if I only shared the wins, you might think, hey, wow, she's mastered it. Might make you think, I can't get it. I can't get there. But like I said, finding your voice is ongoing, and every hard situation is another practice round. How beautiful is that? You get to have as many practice rounds as you choose to have. Every hard situation is one of those, right? I initially felt defensiveness. I felt the temptation to shrink. I was feeling resentment. I could feel that building, and I was getting ready to say, well, this person does that, and that person does this, and this person, well, you didn't do this. And I was getting ready. And the biggest part of this was that I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with this. But now I can come on here and share what a beautiful gift this has been. What an amazing evolution into this version of myself that I know exists. This would not be happening in my life if I wasn't ready for it. And so, like I said, any opportunity where this is coming up for you, you can take it as from this is an attack. That's where I was initially going with it, to all right, this is feedback I can use. This is constructive feedback. Okay. And it actually is helping. So today I actually took the bull by the horns, contacted somebody within the organization. I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm going to have this conversation. How would you like me to approach it? Do you want me to do this? And it was a conversation. It wasn't, as a leader, what I learned is there's a difference between a leader, a boss, and a director. Leader is there, and people are looking up to you as a leader. As a boss, it's just, okay, I got to be accountable to this person as a boss. Director, you're just getting things done, and that's how I see it. But a leader, understanding that others perceive me to be a leader, really has helped me to step into, okay, I'm going to do things differently, and see the feedback like a mirror, right? And use that feedback constructively. Now, was everything that this coworker told me true about me? Maybe according to his experience. It's just his perception. It's his lived experience of me. Whether it's true about me, I can, take it to heart, or I can just say, all right, let's use this as an opportunity to be better, right? So I just want you to understand that too. When somebody does give you feedback, it's their perception. It's their experience of you. Doesn't mean that it's actually true. It's their experience of you. And like I said, that is actually one of the lines that I learned at a personal development event. Rather than, hey, Priya, this is what you do. This is how you are. This is and then actually defining it to you. How I describe these people have written to me in texts where I had to block them for 24 hours because it was so hurtful. You can easily say, hey, my experience of you has been such that. And nobody can take that away from you because it is your experience. And somebody saying that to you, it also takes away the sting just a little bit. That's the experience. Now, was this the first time that I had heard that I avoid? No. At a personal development event, and I've gone to quite a few in the past 5 years, where we had a leadership activity. We had to do something pretty labor intensive together. And this person, we had to go around in a circle and give each other feedback. The one person did say to me, Priya, I saw that you don't speak up. You just become small and you go back into the crowd, and you didn't offer any feedback. You didn't even say, hey, do you need help? And yeah, that's been my personality. That's been how small I've played my whole life, because I didn't know that I had a voice or that my voice even mattered. So you're going to get these little reminders at different times in your life, especially when you're committing to that personal growth, especially when you're saying, hey, show me, universe, where my edge is, show me where my growth edge is. You're going to get opportunities for that to happen. And it's how do you accept it? How do you receive it? And you don't have to receive it the way that I did the past 3 days, with getting hurt and upset and so angry that I had to have a crying release. It could just be so objective that, interesting. Okay, let's do something about it. And that takes practice. I'm only saying that right now because that's where I am at. I was not there the past 3 days. But next time this comes up and somebody's offering me feedback, will I have more tools to be able to be objective about it? Absolutely. No doubt. No doubt. So I want to ask you a question. What's your first instinct when you get tough feedback? What do you do? Do you get defensive? Do you shrink? Do you lash back? Do you say, hey, what about you? What about you? I've heard that one before, and I probably used it a couple of times as well. But think about that. Think about even in the workplace, the supervisor's giving you feedback. What do you do? I remember early on in my speech therapy career when I worked at a very, very toxic school in Harlem, in New York City. They were not compassionate at all. The leadership was heavy-handed, and so when I got feedback from them, it was toxic, and so I always left there crying, and I shrunk and I got scared. And as I shifted careers or even just locations, similar things happened where I got that feedback. And especially, one of the examples, as the speech therapist, I had come up with just something for a presentation at our National Speech and Language Hearing Association convention, and it got accepted, and other people found out about it within the program, and they went on attack mode about it because they had PhDs. It was ridiculous, and I cowered. It wasn't tough feedback, but I got defensive. I got scared. I got small, or I allowed myself to become small. And what I think I remember doing with them as well is just not responding to the emails and just avoiding the conflict because it was so uncomfortable. So you can have this happen in workplace. You can have this happen in marriage, when you get tough feedback in marriage, and in some of the people that I've spoken to who have really strong marriages, they're able to have that conversation where, hey, can we talk about something that happened? This happened and it made me feel this way. And it's a healthy conversation. Nobody feels attacked, and the feedback is actually well received. My example with that partner was never like that. There was never any, hey, can we talk about what happened? It was attack mode. It was finger pointing, and there was constant defensiveness. The other person never, ever, ever, ever liked to be provided with feedback. So they deflected, what about you? And they got defensive, angry, and they shut down and created conflict. And for some reason, that actually felt comfortable, even though I hated it because it was ineffective and, as I said, toxic. What about with friendships? What's your first instinct when you get tough feedback from friends? What do you try to do? I got tough feedback from, I've given examples of friends that I just don't talk to anymore, but I've gotten tough feedback from other friends before where I definitely got defensive. Now I have friends that there's more reciprocity, there's more loving kindness and compassion in the dynamic, that nothing ever feels like an attack. But there have been friendships where it felt like finger pointing. And how did you react? So my question to you is, what's your first thing to do? What do you do when you get tough feedback? So avoiding hard conversations, it doesn't protect you. It doesn't protect you at all. And that's one thing that I've learned in these couple of days. It erodes trust, and it erodes leadership. It builds resentment. It allows, if you're running an organization, it allows for backdoor chatter, meaning that people are chattering behind closed doors. And even if you're trying to do amazing things or you're holding team building things, the team is always going to pick up on it when you're not working on yourself. And that was my growth edge. Realizing that stepping into discomfort doesn't mean I'm mean or wrong or bad. It doesn't define me. It just means I'm leading. Like, this is not, I took this whole feedback thing to mean that they were defining me. They were telling me who I was. Meanwhile, it wasn't. It just means I'm leading. And when you lead, to be an effective leader, you have to be able to listen to others. You have to be able to understand what the needs are of your team or your client or whoever you're working with. And, I've been avoiding these conversations for years, years. And it finally caught up to me. And I'm not saying that, I've been honest that I'm not perfect in my communication. I actually had some pretty toxic communication patterns, correcting people, and, it, but I never saw this. I never saw this. I never saw my avoidance behaviors, the avoidance communication. And it caught up to me, and I'm grateful for it because I get to shift it. Starting today, or starting the other day, I get to shift it, and I get to improve. And that's gonna allow others to improve around me. The one thing that I want to come back to that I mentioned before is offering yourself grace. What does that mean? So I want to talk about what it means, because I've had a few people say, offer yourself some grace. What does that mean? When we hear that all the time, offering grace. So when you're having this self-talk. So for me, what I found myself doing the past few days was a lot of negative self-talk. And I've always said, I'm saying to my coaching clients, you're done with negative self-talk. And yet I found myself in that cycle. So one of the questions that my mentor asked me is, offer yourself grace. And so I want you to ask yourself that too. If you're in this place of negative self-talk, what does it mean to offer yourself grace? And as I talk with you here and reflect on that question, it's understanding that I'm imperfectly perfect. It's understanding that just because I'm a communication coach, just because I'm a speech pathologist, doesn't mean that I'm going to be perfect in my communication. It's about the learning to be better and better and better. So offering myself grace means it's okay, Priya, that you got this feedback. Now you've got room for improvement. Because we don't want to just be perfect, right? We want to be vulnerable. We want to know that, hey, there's times where we're going to fall on the ground and we need somebody to help pick us up. And there's times where we're going to have to help somebody pick them up because they've fallen down. So I want you to ask yourself that question. If you find that you're very harsh with yourself, if you've taken that feedback and you've run with it, offer yourself some grace. And what does that mean to you? How can you tell yourself, hey, you're doing the best that you can given what you've been given? And that's what I often tell my clients. And that's what I needed to say to myself. And I didn't until right now, is I am doing the best that I can given what I've been given. And luckily, I was shown something that's now going to shift what best that I can, what that level is. And then when I get there, I'm sure I'm going to be shown something else that's going to tell me, hey, you got to shift this. It's about evolution. It's about growth. It's about constantly meeting our edge and moving beyond that. And this is why I talk about finding your voice in midlife, because it's not about suddenly being perfect. And all of a sudden you find your voice and things are great. It's about learning to stand in your truth. And even when your knees are shaking and you feel like you're going to vomit because you don't know how to handle the situation. And this isn't just about me and my colleagues and the work situation. It's about all of us who have been taught to keep the peace, not rock the boat, stay small. And that's essentially what I was doing. I was not rocking the boat. I was trying to keep the peace. Meanwhile, it was brought to my attention that that's actually destructive. My intention around it was not, oh, I want to avoid you. That wasn't exactly what I was definitely not saying I want to avoid this situation altogether. No, my inner intention was keep the peace, don't rock the boat. Keep the peace, don't rock the boat. Do what feels comfortable so that you don't rock the boat. That was my mantra. Now I get to move beyond. Okay, so for this last part, what do we do when we're in these situations? I've talked about my vulnerability in sharing with you that, hey, this is a process and we get to learn together. We get to grow together. What do we do when we're in these situations where the feedback stings or you feel like somebody's being manipulative with the feedback? One thing that we can try, and I need to practice what I preach, is the pause button. That's a huge one. Well, as a leader, you can't be reactive. That's probably one of the most destructive patterns, is to be reactive. So it's taking those moments and reflecting, taking as long as you need, 24 hours if you need to. I just didn't talk to people for a couple of, for 2 days or so, just to allow myself to have that quiet time to really process. And I wish I had given myself more grace and allowed myself more pause time instead of spiraling. Because I spiraled and that felt comfortable because that's what I did my whole life. And then I was talking to other people and looking for feedback. And I asked my sister, I don't know what I was looking for in asking for feedback. And essentially what I came to the conclusion was I was trying to get people to maybe tell me that I'm not a bad person, even though I wasn't told that I was a bad person. I was looking for feedback that, Priya, you're good, you're okay. But in talking to other people, that actually messed me up even more. So the pause button, press it, press it. It's okay. Also tap into your values. Come back to your mission and values. We all have values. We all have a mission. It could be the organization's mission. It could be our mission just within ourselves. My mission for existence is to really feel into every moment as best as I can, to just embrace this present moment because this is all we have. So asking yourself, does engaging in this drama, or even creating it, because I created drama, does it serve my mission? Is it a distraction? So tap into that when you find yourself in this place similar to where I've been. Come back to it. If you don't know what your mission is, if you don't know what your values are, start to journal on that. What is important to you? Because it's not going to be about, I want to be a millionaire, or about your career. When you get really clear on what your mission is and what your values are, it really comes down to something very basic within yourself. About love, about compassion, about living. And the third thing that we can do is setting boundaries, right? And we can say to someone, I hear you, but let's bring this back. And when the mentor was saying this to me, I did say that, I hear you. And so it was a very supportive call with the mentor. I just took it to the next level. I actually created more drama than I needed to by talking to other people to get their perspective, because rather than just sitting with that all that the mentor said was, Priya, you needed to have had that conversation. Rather than just sitting with that, then I opened up a whole Pandora's box for myself. So set some boundaries, not just for others, set some boundaries for yourself and allow yourself that quiet time. And this can be the workplace, marriage, parenting, friendship. Come back to this. Think of a time when you avoided a hard conversation. I asked you about this before. What did it cost you? Peace of mind, clarity, self-respect, the actual friendship or the relationship. I can think of a hard conversation that I should have had with my friend Najat a few years ago. Just we were in a really weird dynamic. And I felt like a child. I felt like she was my mother and controlling. Rather than talk about it, there was just a lot of animosity built and a lot of passive aggressive behavior on both sides. And ultimately, I got a blasting email from her telling me, she didn't tell me what her perspective was. She told me who I was. And so I responded to that, but never once did I call her to say, hey, can we talk? I didn't have the tools at the time. And I didn't hear from her either. And years later, I heard from her husband, and she died. She had died from cancer. And that's probably one of the biggest regrets that I had, is that I didn't have that hard conversation with her, because she was such a good friend. She helped me through so much. She was there for me when I was in my 30s and going through really tough times, and she was much older than me. And I didn't have that hard conversation. So think about that. What is it costing you? Imagine that you've had that conversation. What might have been possible? If I had had that conversation with her, I would have been able to see her before she died. I would have been able to visit her in her house. I would have been able to spend some time with her and her husband, because pretty soon after that, a year later, her husband died. I was so excited that I got to be in touch with her husband and, indirectly in touch with her again. And he died a year later. So, just whether it's at work, like I said, marriage, partners, parenting, anywhere, what are you giving up by not having that hard conversation? What are you giving up by taking that feedback and just internalizing it and allowing it to affect your relationships? So, my commitment going forward is to stop being small when things get uncomfortable, right? That's my commitment to you and on this channel, and to show up vulnerably to you and tell you when I've done something that wasn't in my highest. Or to show that I'm actually human and that I'm part of the teaching that I'm teaching you. I'm learning through teaching. I'm learning what I do through talking about it. And I may not do it perfectly, but I'd rather stumble than stay silent about it, because I know this is going to help so many people, because I know I'm not the only one. So if this episode resonated with you, hit subscribe, share this episode with somebody who you feel may benefit from this, like the episode, and thank you for following my channel. And share in the comments what resonated with you. Share where you've played small. Share how you've reacted when you've received feedback. I want to hear from you. And just know, hey, sometimes we're still going to avoid the hard stuff. I still, I've realized I do this past week. But every time I choose to use my voice instead of staying silent, I grow a little stronger. And so can you. This place, I don't think it's any coincidence that I am in this place of midlife, that I am postmenopausal, and that I'm finding my voice through this. It's not a time to disappear and shrink. We've been doing that our whole lives, being small, shrinking, taking the feedback, and then just becoming even smaller. It's our time to rise. If you're a woman, you are in perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. It is our time to rise. So go have the conversation that you've been avoiding. Go listen to that feedback that you received maybe a couple of months ago and reflect on it. Ask, what is it here to show you? And constantly ask yourself that, what is it here to show me? Taking feedback and avoiding and reacting, it keeps us small. And your voice is going to set you free. And the choice is yours. So see you on the next episode. And like I said, drop your comments, share your story. I'd love to hear from you.